Making Harvard Zero, the tale of my thesis. Upon my arrival at Harvard's underground archive, I received a photo ID which allowed me to pass security and enter into the special collections. As an Emerson graduate student, I was able to schedule an appointment with a researcher to discuss the topic of my thesis in the hope of locating archival material that could be used in the making of my film. What I discovered in that process not only changed the topic of the final film, but also the way in which it would be told. I was allowed to bring only a notebook and a camera into the research room. Pencils were provided. A set of double doors opened by a guard led into Harvard's Special Collections Archive. This room contained the records of the school itself, such as yearbooks dating back hundreds of years, records of student councils and committees, a collection of every edition of the Harvard Crimson newspaper, and many other publications. In a back room, I sat down with the research assistant, whom I had been scheduled to meet with. I described what my thesis was about and the goals for my research. The day after the Pearl Harbor attack, the president of Harvard, James Bryan Conant, spoke to 1,200 students gathered in Sanders Theater to hear the broadcast of President Franklin Roosevelt's war message to Congress. Conant pledged to dedicate Harvard's full resources to the war effort. By 1942, with Harvard dubbed Conant's arsenal, researchers were at work on radar jamming, night vision, aerial photography, sonar, explosives, napalm, a protocomputer, blood plasma derivatives, synthesized quinine, anti-malarial drugs, and new treatments for burns and shock. Other researchers worked on code breaking and atomic bomb research. By 1945, Harvard's income from government contracts was $33.5 million. At the final graduation ceremony, Conant explained in his speech that war-related science was expanding so fast that it required space in Harvard's Law School's Austin Hall, as well as the Hemingway Gymnasium. Of what goes on behind these closed doors, he stated, no word may now be told. This direct quote is in the film. In September 1943, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill accepted the honorary degree he had been offered by Harvard the previous May. In his speech he stated, "The empires of the future are the empires of the mind." On June 29, 1944, with Harvard remaining a virtual military training facility, graduating seniors in the regular degree course numbered only 19, the smallest number since 1753. Nuance is defined as a subtle difference in meaning. The themes in the film do not change, but rather they evolve. This creates a nuanced picture of this extraordinary time in history. President Conant's actions in response to the lacrosse game have one meaning in the first portion of the film. We learn that he has apologized to Admiral Wilson at the Navy Academy for allowing a player of color to play on the team. By the end of the film, this action holds a different meaning due to the change in context, which is the realization of the inevitability of war. This does not make what he did morally right, but it does change what it means in a way that cannot be explicitly stated by anyone. This gray area is to me a more accurate representation of reality than a documentary which depicts a single side of a multi-layered situation. For me, this would need to be a story brought to life through actors rather than a polished presentation of documented history. My journey of self-discovery resulted in the realization of that which I had always been aware, I had forgotten, and become too afraid to pursue. I am not, nor have I ever wanted to be, a documentary filmmaker. A documentary tells a story about the world in which we live. Narrative filmmaking is the act of creating a world in order to tell a story, regardless of whether that story is fiction or based on historical events. The world upon the screen either becomes reality to the audience or it does not, and it fails. To make a film is to use time and space as a painter would wield a brush in the creation of a painting. Nothing has ever excited me more, nor will it. The greatest challenge of this project was overcoming the fear that comes with such responsibility. Only when I faced the reality of failure did my limitations become liberating. My methods were the result of necessity, and necessity is